What if I told you that going to the bathroom in the Middle Ages could literally get you killed? Medieval toilets weren't just gross, they were deadly traps of disease, filth, and foul surprises. Stick around to uncover the shocking truth about how people survived their daily bathroom battles. Let's begin with what might seem like the most luxurious option, the castle toilets. In grand medieval castles, the so-called luxury toilets were hardly better than the filth outside. These toilets, called guardrobes, were simple stone seats with holes, positioned over deep pits or water-filled ditches known as moats. Even though the name sounds fancy, they were actually very basic and unpleasant. When people used the guardrobes, their waste would fall down into the walls of the castle or straight into the moat below. This made the air smell really bad and helped spread sickness. Surprisingly, guardrobes were often built close to the bedrooms, so the bad smell would reach the rooms where the lords and ladies slept. To cope, nobles often relied on smelly herbs, perfumes, or even burning incense to mask the overwhelming stench. But let's be honest, no amount of rose petals could hide the reality of medieval sanitation. Even worse, during attacks on castles, enemies sometimes used the garderobe tunnels as secret ways to get inside the castle. So, if you thought kings and queens had better bathrooms, think again, their castle toilets were just as gross and dangerous as the streets outside. What about the peasants? How did they manage bathroom needs? For regular medieval peasants, going to the bathroom was not private or clean. Most villages didn't have proper toilets or small outdoor toilets called outhouses. Instead, people went to the bathroom outside in open fields, ditches, or behind bushes. Many homes had chamber pots. These were small containers kept under beds to catch pee or poop during the night. But the problem was, people usually emptied these pots right into the streets or nearby rivers and streams. This caused human waste to mix with the water people drank, which made the water dirty and dangerous, causing many diseases. Some villages had big holes called middens or cesspits where people threw their waste. But these pits were not cleaned often and would get full and overflow. It was common to see pigs and dogs digging through the waste, and children playing very close to this dirty mess. There was no system for cleaning up properly, no sanitation, so peasants lived in a risky environment where waste caused illness, and disease outbreaks were common. Have you ever wondered just how bad the stench was in medieval cities? It was a world where the stench was inescapable, an overwhelming mix of human waste, decaying food, and animal refuse that hung thick in the air, choking the streets of cities like London, Paris, or Florence. Without proper sewage systems or drainage, waste disposal was an everyday crisis. Most households didn't have private latrines, so people simply tossed buckets of waste, or the contents of chamber pots, directly out of their windows. To avoid splashing unsuspecting passers-by below, residents shouted "Gardez-le," a distorted version of the French, meaning watch out for the water. But even with this warning, dodging the filthy downpour wasn't always possible. Public latrines were often little more than communal wooden benches placed over cesspits or open drains, used by all social classes and frequently overflowing. Worse, many of these latrines were positioned directly above rivers that were used for washing clothes, bathing, and even fetching drinking water. In fact, medieval London's River Thames became so polluted with human waste and industrial runoff that it earned the grim nickname the Great Stink by later centuries. This widespread lack of cleanliness extended to personal hygiene practices as well. Toilet paper as we know it simply didn't exist in medieval times. Instead, people used a variety of unusual and often unhygienic materials to clean themselves after using the bathroom. Some used straw, moss, leaves, or even scraps of cloth, while others relied on their hands, sometimes washing them in a communal basin afterward, sometimes not. In monasteries and some public latrines, a shared sponge on a stick was common, passed from person to person, which today sounds downright disgusting. Hygiene wasn't well understood, the connection between germs and waste was unknown, so many practices that seem revolting to us were simply normal back then. The absence of personal toilet paper and the use of communal cleaning methods made bathroom visits a much dirtier, riskier affair than anything we'd imagine today. While medieval toilets were bad enough, someone had to deal with the filthy aftermath, and that someone was the infamous night soil men. These brave workers collected human waste from cesspits and privies, often hauling it away by hand or horse-drawn carts through the streets. Their job was not only physically disgusting but incredibly dangerous, exposing them to deadly diseases and accidents daily. On top of that, society viewed them as the lowest of the low, shunned and avoided because of the stench and the filth they carried. Despite the grim conditions, their work was vital for keeping medieval towns from sinking under their own waste. If dealing with waste wasn't bad enough, the very toilets themselves could be deadly traps. Garderobe chutes, those medieval castle toilets sometimes collapsed unexpectedly, sending unlucky users plunging down shafts filled with waste. In towns, cesspits beneath homes could cave in without warning, swallowing people whole or drowning them in the foul, fetid sludge. These terrifying accidents remind us that medieval sanitation wasn't just gross, it was often a matter of life and death. The poor sanitation of medieval times wasn't just gross, it was deadly. With human waste littering the streets and polluting water sources, serious diseases spread like wildfire. One of the most infamous outbreaks was the Black Death, a devastating plague that wiped out millions of people across Europe. Back then, people didn't understand germs or bacteria. Instead, they believed in miasma, the idea that bad, poisonous air rising from rotting waste caused illness. Because of this mistaken belief, they focused on covering up the smell rather than fixing the real problem. Meanwhile, water contaminated with human waste and the open sewers running through towns provided the perfect breeding grounds for fleas, rats, and deadly bacteria that spread plague, cholera, and dysentery. Entire villages could be wiped out in a matter of weeks, leaving behind ghost towns. One shocking example is how the plague wiped out over a third of Europe's population in just a few years. The constant presence of waste in daily life made even the simple act of walking through a street a gamble with disease and death. This tragic connection between medieval sanitation and deadly disease outbreaks highlights just how crucial proper waste management is, and how a lack of it shaped the course of history in horrifying ways. So next time you sit down comfortably on your toilet, remember that centuries ago, people were literally living with their own filth. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the disgusting truth about medieval toilets, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more surprising stories from history.